Present day. Present time.
Greetings and hello. Welcome to another Bonzo on MMA. We're going over UFC Santos versus Hill. This is a really fun card, but really straightforward, I think, anyway, in terms of how these fights should go. I think it's going to be a rather I think a lot of these fights are going to be a rather one-sided affair, to be rather honest with you. Before we get into that, though, I did want to touch our bottom left corner, 9-4. As you can see, we went 9-4 on our UFC 277 pick'ems. 9 out of 4. I think the only main event fight we got wrong was the main event, Juliana Pena versus Amanda Nunes. I thought that Pena would be able to repeat her performance. I was dead wrong. Nunes looks absolutely fantastic. I can admit that I was wrong. I can admit that Nunes does have a future within the division. It doesn't look like she's going to retire anytime soon. She might take some time off, which I do believe is fine and warranted. She has a child. But again, super exciting to see where things go moving forward for her in that division. But it's very obvious. I think Joe Rogan even said on the podcast, or I think it was either Joe Rogan or DC, she's not really a double champ. She is a single champ of that division. There's no one else to fight at that higher weight class. So she will probably be 135, period. And 145 is just kind of a symbolic title. That being said, she has won that title, so she does have every right to, and defended that title, so she does have every right to say she is a double champion, but I think moving forward, her main kind of focus is going to be on 135. That being said, let's focus on this card, Santos versus Hill. There's so many exciting fights on this card, man. Not so many a lot on the early prelims. We start off with a women's bantamweight fight. Mayra Bruno Silva versus Stephanie Egger. This is really a toss-up between the two. Egger's 2-1 in the UFC, and Bruno Silva is 4-2-1 in the UFC. I think that if this goes to the ground, Bruno Silva really has the advantage there, and she is the better of the two on the ground. And I kind of expect her to be a little bit more fluid in her striking as well, given her camp. So I really see that I really think that Mayra can take the win here. I think she wins it in a bit more of a decision as opposed to kind of getting the finish here, but I wouldn't put it past her to get the finish if it goes to the ground. Going on to a bit more of an exciting fight, we have Cory McKenna versus Miranda Granger. McKenna's rising. She's one of the rising stars in strawweight, in the women's strawweight division. She looked really good in her Dana White's contender match, as well as in her UFC debut. But Miranda Granger is dangerous, and she's coming off of 2 losses. And any fighter, in my opinion, who's coming off of any kind of loss is in a position to want to get a win, and a flashy win at that. It'll be really interesting to see if McKenna can get past that, early onslaught, which I think is going to come from Miranda, to try and throw her off her guard and not let her settle into her game plan. If she can really get past that, I think that McKenna has a really good shot of taking this win here, and I think it's probably going to come with regards to a decision, but I think it's going to be a very impressive decision. Moving on, Josh Quinlan versus Jason Witt. This is a little bit of a fun one too. Quinlan's putting his O on the line. He's 5-0-0. Technically, he's 6-0-0. He had a really great flash TKO win and Dana White's Contender Series. He's facing an older and more experienced fighter in Jason Witt, but Witt is kind of known for getting KO'd and TKO'd, and I think that this isn't going to be a long night for him. I think that Quinlan, who I believe is the favorite in this fight too, gets the TKO or KO win here. Moving on, we have a bit more of an interesting fight here. We have Bryan Battle versus Takeshi Sato. If anybody was watching The Ultimate Fighter, they'll know that Bryan Battle was actually on that show, season 29, and was the winner. He won also at welterweight. So this is him competing at the middleweight division. So really interesting to see, how he does here. Oh, sorry. No, he's making his debut at welterweight from middleweight. My apologies. He won the middleweight season of The Ultimate Fighter and is making his debut at welterweight. Sorry, I have to read my notes again there just to make sure I wasn't wrong. Sato is a veteran of Pancrase. He's a veteran of the UFC as well. But again, Bryan Battle is that rising star, in the UFC, winning The Ultimate Fighter season 29. And again, given his age and how good he's looked in his recent wins within the UFC and The Ultimate Fighter, I think that Bryan Battle takes this win here. Moving on to another really fun fight. Terrance McKinney versus Eric Gonzalez. McKinney has heavy hands. Like everyone at lightweight does. I believe that McKinney is also the odds-on favorite for this fight. And McKinney's just tough as nails. And I really see, again, I just see Terrance McKinney getting the easy victory here. I believe that he's the odds-on favorite to really win this fight, and I think that he's going to do it in fantastic fashion. Moving on to light heavyweight. We have light heavyweight. Is this light heavyweight or is this... It says 185. Interesting. I know that Sam missed weight and somebody else missed weight. We're going to talk about that in the next fight. But I believe Sam missed weight by 1 pound here. So not sure what's going on there. That being said, Sam is a fan favorite. He's been in the UFC for a long time, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the last fight on his contract. And that being said, he's been on a 7-fight losing skid. There's no easy way to put it. I have a very strong feeling this is probably going to be the end of the line for Sam Alvey, and I have a strong feeling it's probably going to be a finish. Michael has wins over Shamil Gamedov and Modestas Bukauskas, but he's coming off a decision loss at UFC 272. But again, I think that given Sam's age, given Sam's on a 7-fight losing streak, it's kind of an open and shut case that Sam loses, especially after missing weight. Speaking of missing weight, we have Ariana Lipski and Priscilla Koshera. Lipski missed weight. She missed weight by, I believe, 2.5 pounds or 1.5 pounds. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe that it's 2.5 pounds. Both of these women like to stand and bang, so I think that we're going to expect a really fun female flyweight fight. I hate to say it like this, but those other 2 female fights that kind of kick the show off aren't going to live up to this fight at all. I think this fight's going to really open a lot of people's eyes to Ariana Lipski. I think that she's really a really good fighter, and I think she's going to have a really fantastic showing against Priscilla, and I think that Ariana Lipski is going to get the win here. Augusto Sakai versus Sergey Spivak. This seems to be, the aging Sakai, who's coming up against the number 14 ranked Spivak. Sakai's lost his last 3 by KO or TKO. I expect similar fashion here. Spivak's younger. He's very technically sound. I see him finishing this fight rather easily. So I'm going to give this to Sergey Spivak. I think it's kind of an open and shut case. We get to 2 very interesting fights on our card now, and we're on the main card too, by the way. We have Juliana Miller versus Brogan Walker. This is the first of the Ultimate Fighter finales, and this is, if I'm not mistaken, at flyweight. Miller, if I'm not mistaken, is also the slight favorite, despite not having that experience. But I think that that's what's going to play a very big role here. I think Brogan's experience is really going to play a factor in how she controls the octagon. And I think that if this fight gets to the ground, I think she's going to have a really good shot at beating Juliana Miller. If I'm being honest with you, I don't really expect the fight to go that direction. I kind of expect a lot of wrestling from Brogan Walker, and I don't really expect Juliana Miller really to have an answer, and I expect 3 rounds of that. So I think Brogan wins. I don't really think it's going to be an interesting fight, though. Then one I do think is going to be a little bit more interesting. Let me actually slow my roll there and take it back to Juliana Miller and Brogan Walker. I think that Juliana does, being the younger fighter, have the opportunity to get an easy victory against Brogan, meaning a first or second round finish. I don't see her winning a decision. That's just me personally. But I do see, again, I do have a very strong feeling that Juliana, if she is able to crack Walker, I think she can finish her. I think if she gets I'm going to be honest, if I see probably a body shot into a stiff right, so a left hook, body shot into a right straight, I think that Miller can probably sit Walker down, and I think she'll finish her from there. So that might be something to watch. But the next fight is going to be a little bit more interesting insofar as we have an Usman We don't have the pound for pound number one, Kamaru Usman, but we have his brother, Mohammed Usman. He has fought his way to the finale of The Ultimate Fighter in the heavyweight division, and he faces off against Zach Pwaga, who's putting his O on the line as well. I expect a lot of wrestling from Usman, to be quite honest. I think that's his key to victory. I think his brother has really kind of set him up for success there, or rather, like, him and his brother have been set up for success there. It really is a matter of how technically sound he is on his feet and his cardio. I think those are Mohammed Usman's two biggest weaknesses. I think that Zach Pwaga has really nice hands, and I think that he has the opportunity to sit Usman down early in this fight, but if Usman starts wrestling, I think it's going to be a clear Usman victory. I think that both of those fights are kind of going to go for the wrestlers in this scenario. That being said, I think that Usman really does have the opportunity to do a little bit more here and go for a TKO finish if he can get the ground and pound, really, because I don't see him doing it standing. I think he might be able to get a good shot and then lead it into some ground and pound like his brother. But I think the real shots are going to come in the wrestling if he can get the takedown and then start the ground and pound from there up against the cage. I think Usman can win in that regard. Moving on to our co-main event. To be quite honest, I see these two fights as probably the most important of the night. I think that these two fights are probably going to be the fight of the nights too, to be quite honest with you. I don't really see much of these other fights really going... Yeah, I don't really see them being all that interesting. I see these two being decisions. I see this being a KO victory. I see this also being these four actually being finishes. This one has the opportunity to be a finish, but I can see it going the full round. I can see this being a finish. And then these two I think are going to be decisions. Whereas we get to Vicente Luque and Geoff Neal, and Thiago Santos and Jamahal Hill. Starting with the co-main event, Vicente Luque and Geoff Neal, these are two really good technical fighters. We have the number 7 facing off against the number 16 guy in Geoff Neal, but Geoff Neal, don't count him as being number 16 and being like, oh, this guy's like looking in. Geoff Neal has the ability to place within the top 15 very easily. So this is a very fair fight between these two, and I would consider this more between like a 7 and 8 kind of fight if we're viewing it as that. This is a fight between two guys that have the opportunity to really push themselves towards the top 5 in this division. And I think that a win here puts either of those guys there. Vicente Luque, I think, is the more experienced fighter. And given that his higher rank and having faced some of these tougher guys in main event scenarios like he has against Belal Muhammad, he has the ability to take Geoff Neal into deep waters. I think that his path to victory as well is his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and tapping out Geoff Neal. That being said, Geoff has some very, very, very tough hands. Geoff is one of the hardest hitters, I believe, in the welterweight division, and I think that he could really rock Vicente a couple of times, especially within the early parts of this match. And I think that that's what a lot of the matchmakers were betting on for this fight. But that being said, Geoff does also have a tank. I don't expect Geoff to, be one of those one-round trick ponies like we might see in some of these earlier fights, but I really expect him to put that pressure onto Vicente for those full 3 rounds. Expect a really close fight, but if I'm being honest with you, if Geoff can stop the wrestling from Vicente, or the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu rather from Vicente, I can see Geoff actually stealing a win here. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's... the underdog for this fight. Let's see. Yeah, slight underdog. So it's a total toss-up between these two in regards to who's going to win. But again, personally speaking, I think that Geoff really does have the opportunity to steal one here. Our main event. This is the surging Jamahal Hill taking on the former contender Thiago Santos. Jamahal Hill's only loss in the UFC is to Paul Craig, and his loss to Paul Craig was a broken arm. We all know Paul Craig's guard is probably the best in I would say the UFC. He's probably got the best guard in the UFC. There have been so many fights where he's been in trouble against guys who are now within the top 5 of the division, and he's been in deep water against them, and then he's eked out, a submission win. And he did the same to Jamahal Hill. Jamahal Hill was a perfect fighter, and then Paul Craig got his hands on him, and he ended that fight. That being said, Jamahal Hill is still a surging fighter with some absolute dynamite in his hands. You know who else has dynamite in his hands? Thiago Santos. That's what makes this fight fun. Both of these guys have absolute knockout power in their hands. Thiago Santos has the experience going 5 rounds with guys like the former champion, John Jones. Jamahal Hill has the ability to knock guys like his last win in Johnny Walker, which was a beautiful KO. I mean, like, this is not going to be anything but fireworks. And I think, quite honestly, the deceptive reach of Jamahal Hill and his deceptive frame is really going to fool Thiago Santos here. And I think that Jamahal Hill actually gets a TKO finish. Kind of similar to the one that he gets against, against Johnny Walker. He just catches Thiago just by the skin of his hands, and he just puts him down. And from there, he adds on a couple of extra shots, and he finishes him. I really see Jamahal Hill winning this one. So that is this card, Santos versus Hill. It starts tomorrow at 7 o'clock. We got the prelims going on live there. We got so many fantastic fights. I'll go over who I think is going to win again. I have Mayra Bruno Silva winning in the first fight, followed by Cory McKenna, Josh Quinlan, Bryan Battle, Terrance McKinney, Michal, Ariana Lipski, Sergey Spivak, Brogan Walker, Mohammed Usman, Geoff Neal, and Jamahal Hill. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I hope I'm right, as always, and I'll see you guys later.